poetry and essays. Sounds funny, doesn't it? That I've written about living in Cottage Grove.
Closer to the mic.
When I first settled in Cottage Grove 6 years ago, I learned very quickly that life in suburban sprawl of California is slightly different than life in rural Oregon. When we first moved to our new home outside of town, well, I had moved. After dropping me off with an air mattress and some camping chairs, my husband was going back to California to spend the next few months wrapping up our life. I would be roughing it in our little house in the woods, far, far away from the bright lights of the big city. Wow, it's really dark out there, my husband observed as he stared out the window into the night. This is my knight in shining armor, my brave protector, the man abandoning me in the wilderness, now expressing his discomfort over the lack of ambient illumination. With loving tenderness, I told him, "Shut the fuck up." Though I concurred with his assessment of the situation, I didn't need to be reminded. It was dark out there. Hell, you couldn't see the forest or the trees. After he left, I barely stuck a toe outside once the sun went down. You never know. There could be werewolves, vampires, chainsaw-wielding psychopaths lurking in the trees, a lot to mention the cougars and the bears. A few weeks later, I found myself facing a dilemma. The perceived meteor shower was about to happen. In a large city, light pollution hides what the night sky has to offer. Back in SoCal, you need to drive 50 to 100 miles away from civilization so the lights wouldn't eclipse the view. Here, I just needed to step outside. I knew the perfect spot. A sweep of open land facing east, framed by Douglas firs. All I would take was the courage to walk a few hundred feet from the safety and security by the tiny lights of the house. And so armed with a big flashlight, my dog, not for protection, mind you, Sky weighs about 10 pounds and has an overdeveloped sense of self-preservation. I like to think of her as the furry version of a civil defense early warning system. If she runs, so do I. The Sky soon rewarded me with a dazzling display of light. I tried to interest the dog, but she, having discovered the desiccated corpse of some long-dead rodent, was oblivious and unimpressed. Unable to compete, I gave up and settled back to watch the meteorites burn like streaks of silver fire across the heavens. But I also listened to the snap of a twig, to the slight rustling in the bushes, to anything that sounded bigger than a bread box. My odd light show in the sky was replaced by lots of sharp claws and teeth and chainsaws. So with tail tucked and with as much dignity, no dignity at all, I scampered back to the house as fast as my city girl legs would carry me. While learning to cope with the whole darkness issue, I also began to get acquainted with my neighbors. A morning walk to the mailbox, I was savoring my new life in the woods, enjoying the sunlight as it shined through the trees. I reached the crest of the lane and was pleased to see an old man working by the side of the road. My first encounter with a neighbor. We greeted each other and I introduced myself, and after a few pleasantries regarding the weather and such, he looked at me grimly, face lined with mountain wisdom, and said, "Don't go walking in the woods alone without a gun." Startled by the abrupt change in topic, I covered my surprise and simply asked, "Why?" "Cougars," he said. This didn't come as a big surprise, though before we bought our place, the previous owner had assured me that no cougars roamed the area. To be honest, I was relieved he hadn't said meth-crazed addicts. He then regaled me with the story of a woman who lived just down the road, who woke up one morning to find a huge cougar sleeping in her driveway. The authorities had dispatched, and so was the cougar. While he was telling me his tale, a couple of other neighbors dropped by to get acquainted. They too had cougar stories to share, including one about a 12-footer who lived just up the road, and another massive beast who was hit by a car on the main road. And the grislier the story, the better. After I got my goats, another neighbor eagerly told me a delightful tale about someone out this way whose goats were decapitated by a cougar. With great glee and in the spirit of information sharing, I was provided with every gory detail of their demise. Over the next few months, I accumulated more stories about cougars, all ending with either a deceased feline of epic proportions or the horrific death of a beloved pet. This led me to the conclusion that cougar stories are either the rural version of an urban myth or the quaint local game called Let's Mess with the Californian. Since moving here, I have not only heard stories, but I've also been given advice on how to deal with those hordes of marauding cougars. The basic one is, if you see a cougar, just shoot it. This is always followed by the caution to mention that it was threatening me and or my livestock. My favorite suggestion, though, came from a friend in Southern California, actually my son, but I'm not supposed to say that, who suggested that I use, wait for it, pepper spray. To me, this seems less than optimal because you must get close enough to spray the animal in the eyes. The end result being you are now standing next to a near-blind and very pissed off cougar. Needless to say, neither of these options fit my attitude towards the local predatory wildlife, which is more of a live and let live kind of philosophy. But just in case I find a giant cougar sleeping in my driveway, I've decided to apply my earlier solution to the darkness problem and stay indoors. The next time I met a new neighbor, the opening greeting was slightly different. Hi, it's nice to meet you. Kill the turkeys. An unusual welcome to the neighborhood, but after the cougars incident, I was sensing a theme. Despite my neighbor's request, I find the birds entertaining and feel no inclination to practice alien genocide. Wild turkeys strike me as amazing birds, quite unlike their domesticated counterparts. Commercial turkeys are on record for being so stupid that they will stand in the rain, faces up with their mouths open until they drown. I think of them as vegetables with feathers, which makes being a vegetarian at Thanksgiving a breeze. A few days later, after finally arriving at Cottage Grove, my husband decided to take a walk down the lane. A short while later, he returned looking white-faced and slightly shaken. "There's something big in the trees," he declared in hushed tones. Just as I walked under, it made a noise like boom, boom, boom. Old country Canada. I'd become, after a few months in the life on the farm, I smiled at him and said, "Oh, it's just the turkeys." "No," he argued. "This is way up in the trees." "Yeah, I know. They sleep up there at night." Eyes narrowed with disbelief, he stated, "Turkeys can't fly." I shrugged. "Not very well, but yes, turkeys can fly. I can't actually prove turkeys can perform this aeronautical feat, but I have seen them roosting in branches some 30 to 40 feet above the ground, and I don't think they climbed up there. But the only time I've seen them aloft, they displayed all the grace of an unmoored zeppelin, so it's not their strong suit. But they are skilled combat strategists. One of our cats had a mission to try and catch a wild turkey. I tried to explain many times that one should not try to catch a bird larger than oneself, especially if they are descended from velociraptors. One day, as a flock of about 30 birds were feeding nearby, he stopped them. The turkeys noticed the not-so-wily predator, and by some form of telepathic communication, they spontaneously formed a circle around him and closed in. Closer and closer. It slowly dawned on him that something was amiss. Have you ever seen a white cat try to meld with red dirt? Flattened out like a bad carpet, his doom seemed imminent. Unfortunately, my husband provided divine intervention and chased the turkeys away. And my sadder but wiser kitty now applies my live and live policy to turkeys. Here's a point of interest. Turkeys, like many of us, are not indigenous to Oregon. They even have their own turkey management plan with a number to call in case they ever become a nuisance, unlike California.